Good evening from the Authors Guild Foundation. We're here for a discussion on financial stability for literary writers. This is part of our series, Business Bootcamps for Writers. The series covers the path to publication and career advice for writers of all genres and all career stages. You can find recordings of other events under the resources section at authorsguild.org. We partnered on this event with our friends at Blue Stoop, which offers classes, workshops, and community for writers in the Philadelphia area. Our panelists tonight represent writers and artists from a variety of genres and media, and I'm sure we're in for a great discussion. Thanks to all our panelists for being here. Just have to say, Business Bootcamps for Writers is made possible with support from the National Endowment for the Arts and Penguin Random House. Thank you to all our donors for letting us do these events free and public. We love that. Helps all writers. But if you found out about this event from Blue Stoop or elsewhere, please know you're welcome to join the Authors Guild and enjoy legal advice and other services that we provide our members. And if you want to learn more about Blue Stoop, you can go to bluestoop.org. I'll go ahead and turn it over to our moderator tonight, Ashani Surya. She's operations coordinator at Blue Stoop. Ashani's writing has appeared in The Rumpus, Diagram, Catapult, and Joyland, among others. She was a 2021 May Fellowship recipient and semi-finalist for Key West Literary Seminar's Marianne Russo Award for Novel in Progress. She has an MFA from the University of Arizona, and she's at work on her first novel. Ashani, thank you. And thank you to all our panelists. And I'll turn it to you now.
Thanks so much, Johnny. And yes, thank you so much to everyone for being here and also to our wonderful panelists today. In lieu of formal introductions, I'd love to just actually go around the room and have you each share your name, what you write, and what your best work experience has been. And so what I mean by best is how did it support your writing, both financially and also regarding time? And what was the pay like? So I'm going to go ahead and start with Taylor.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Taylor Towns. My writing name is Rough Draft, and I am currently at work on my first self-published chapbook of poetry. So I am mainly a poet. I have some experience in nonfiction and fiction as well. And I would say my best work experience is the job I'm in right now. I am the current social media and communications coordinator at Blue Stoop. Really excited to be here as part of the team and also as a panelist. And I'm not sure if I should share my pay, but I will say that it's been the perfect opportunity for me out of college to get some work in the writing community in Philadelphia, but also flexible enough hours to continuing focusing on my own craft. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Taylor. Damon, would you like to weigh in? I think you're muted.
I'm muted. Sorry. Hello, everyone. My name is Damon Young. I was muted. You might be able to hear I have two children. They are downstairs. They are not in bed yet. So you can probably hear them right now. So yeah, I'm a writer, author. Debut memoir with Nothing Can Make You Blacker was released in 2019. Also was the founder of Culture Called Very Smart Brothers. I wrote for the New York Times. I forgot what my title was there. Right now, I'm a contributing columnist for the Washington Post, and I've been a columnist for GQ, Esquire, Ebony Magazine back in the day, a few other publications. And my work is usually like nonfiction, observational humor, essay. I talk a lot about, I guess, anxieties and neuroses and just finding the humor and really traumatic shit. Sometimes that's kind of my bag. And I've been fortunate in the last 5 or 6 years to make a lot of money writing. You know, I had a pretty substantial book deal. I also was able to sell my blog to a network for a pretty nice sum of money. And since then, you know, I've been fortunate and privileged to be in positions where, you know, I make enough money to support my entire family through writing. And so that hasn't always been the case with me. I mean, I'm 43 years old and I started writing full time when I was like 31. And I didn't start making real money until I was maybe like 37. So this is still a relatively new development for me.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I think we'll get into how to monetize your writing a little bit, because I think that's a really important question that a lot of people shared they were curious about. Can I call on Isle?
Yeah, hey, thank you for having me. My name is Isle McElroy. I'm primarily a novelist. My first novel came out last May. It's called The Atmospherians, and I have a second novel coming out next fall called People Collide, and I'm working on a new one now. That's how I mostly support myself. I also teach and I do freelance editing as well. Right now I'm teaching a novel generator class, and that has been really good to have a class that is outside of like academia. I have a PhD, but I didn't really want to go into academia. Maybe we can strike that if I ever apply for a job. But I think for right now, I'm really enjoying teaching on my own. I teach through a speaking agency that I have, and that's been really wonderful. And I think this is actually maybe last year counts, I would say, but I think I would say this is the second year that I've been able to actually support myself with my writing. And I'm really sort of adjusting to that, trying to not like, blow it all on extravagant things. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at right now.
Thank you, Isle. And Nia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Nia Hampton. I write a lot of different things. Like literally, I'm an interdisciplinary artist. So writing is the thing that people have been paying me for. And so that's the thing that I like tend to try to put more energy into, because between 2014 and 2017, I was a full-time freelance journalist. I've never been staffed. And I don't know if it's because I've been a freelancer for so long. I've had a lot of interviews, but it's a lot of like, it's weird tension there. So I guess my answer to like the best job that I've had as a writer, I wrote for Genius in like 2016, and I think it was like 500 words, and it gave me like $600. And that was like the most money I've ever made for that amount of words, like to this day. So that's the short answer of that.
Thank you so much, Nia. And I will quickly also share my maybe most lucrative position has been writing video game mobile apps. So I may fill in here and there with some thoughts as well, seeing as that's not always the most straightforward career path as well. But for now, I'd love to ask Taylor to start, and then anyone else who would like to join in as well. How do you work and carve out time for writing?
Yeah, so I would say that it's very important what job you're in. I noticed when I was working in retail and I was a supervisor that I never had the energy to carve out time for my writing. So it's not always about having the time, it's about having the energy and just striving for at least writing a page a day. And what I would say helped me the most, that I recommend for everyone, not just writers, is to buy the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And the main prompt for that book is to write 3 pages every morning. And it's really hard. It's honestly one of the hardest challenges I've ever done. But I think it's really important to understand that no matter what you're doing, if you're a writer at heart, you're going to be a writer regardless, and that you should always carve out that time. I would say in my position right now, because I have such flexible hours, it's given me the opportunity to kind of give myself deadlines, which I think can be very difficult being a freelance writer, and just striving to make sure that you're always creating something, even if it doesn't seem like a big novel or a column for something. It's important to be creating something. And that's what I'll say that I mainly do, is just give myself mini deadlines to even just write a short poem or to read something and write a response to it. And right now I'm actually working on starting a blog that's kind of based on fashion and design in Philadelphia. And I think knowing that you can be more than just a writer and tapping into the other things that you love can also push you to be a better writer.
Yeah, I think those things can really like work in tandem together, right? Like they bring things into your writing, and writing brings things into sometimes your day job as well. Did anyone else want to weigh in on how you're carving out time for work and writing? Cool.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I was muted. Yeah, I'll just say that for me, it's a necessity. Like, and I think that, and I could go back far into my early career and tell that story, and maybe I will eventually on this call, but part of my, drive or discipline is based in fear, right? Where there was a point in time where it's like, you know what, if I don't produce, I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to be able to pay my cable bill. I'm not going to be able to pay my car payment. I'm not going to be able to, have money to get extra bacon at brunch, or whatever. And so there was like an anxiety and fear-based ambition that I guess helped, fuel whatever, whatever method, whatever habit that I've developed over these years in terms of just carving out time every day to write. And again, I don't know if it would have happened the same way for me if I didn't have that fear, if I didn't have that, I don't know, that trauma even. And it's funny because I'm not in a position now where I need it, but I still have it. Like I still have that anxiety about not getting stuff done, about not getting stuff on time, about maybe not producing as much as I feel like I should be producing. Because there's always there's never been a separation with writing, public writing, and making money. Like that is, those two things have always been linked for me. I've never really had an opportunity to just write and just have it, and just not really care about what was going to, how I was going to, make money off the work that I did. So again, that's been just embedded in my process. I'm going to stop now because they're getting loud.
But I do, I really hear what you're saying, that there's this idealistic world in which we can say art and our financial lives are separated, but in actuality, for most of us, that's simply not true. And I think it's really important that you're all here talking about this for that reason. I think another side of that, particularly in America, is health insurance. And so Nia, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you manage or handle the question of not having health insurance and navigating that world.
Okay, I will answer that, but I kind of wanted to jump into what Damon was getting into because I think that's really important. Being a journalist was like my job. Like I still am pursuing film, but being a journalist was kind of like the more practical road for me. And it just so happened that it was working out. And so that if I don't write, I don't eat, it's still very much the reason why I can still have the skill. I have not been a journalist full-time for a couple of years, but it doesn't take a lot for me to go into that part of myself and kind of cultivate that. My relationship to what I'm writing and all of that stuff is very different. I'm trying to write other things, and I actually started self-publishing my work because I was living abroad in Brazil as a journalist and I just needed more money. And I was like, I don't want to do a GoFundMe, but I can write. And so people are willing to pay me for this. And so it just made sense. It wasn't, if I hadn't been put in that situation of do I publish a book or do I just ask for money? I wouldn't have created this self-publishing profile or platform for myself. So just wanted to add that 2 cents. In regards to health insurance, I mean, I'm on Obamacare, it's enrollment season right now. I have not had quote unquote good health insurance since 2020 when I was laid off at the last job. So it's if you are fortunate enough to live in a state that offers public health insurance, then go for it. Before that, I did have a full-time job. I was a comms person in a nonprofit space. When I was doing that, my writing did halt. The resume is not consistent year-wise. There are years where I got to focus on paying bills and doing these things, and there are years when I can afford to really write full-time and pursue that. And the health insurance does look different. So.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. Taylor, please go ahead.
I just also kind of wanted to add on because I think I kind of got introduced to this idea of like carving out time for writing, but also like having it be not really an option, because I graduated from the Creative and Performing Arts High School in Philadelphia. And so for 4 years, my writing was my grade. I could not graduate without finishing deadlines for journalism class and doing nonfiction at the same time and writing my poetry final. And so I think it opened my eyes a lot to how the real world would be, except the difference was grades or getting paid. And so I think there is also this understanding that you have to have with yourself that sometimes it's better to just be writing as much as you can, even if it's absolutely terrible, because the more you're writing, the more chances you have to be creating something amazing. And being in a position where you're either freelancing or you're self-publishing something, you are your teacher or your boss in that scenario. And so making sure that you're the one pushing yourself. I think that fear can be important sometimes, to have like, I need to be doing this. This is my life. And then also kind of creating it as like a spiritual practice, something that you use every day to get you through life beyond just the financial part. And then I think you can kind of make those connections in having both the practice daily and finding ways to make money off of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you so much, Taylor. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to add to that? So a question that's coming up a lot in the chat, and also some of our pre-sent in questions, is really about monetizing our writing. And many of you have mentioned that already. So I'd love for us to talk about how to monetize writing, both in the traditional publishing space. So what does an advance look like? How do you make sure that that book deal, if you get it, is going to help propel you into your next project, as well as what does self-publishing look like? And how do you monetize writing through self-publishing? So I know that Nia, that was a question I think that you were interested in answering. And then we can kind of go around the room, because I'm sure we all have something to say about that.
Oh yeah, I'll start. I mean, my career trajectory is very I don't know, guerrilla. Like my self-publishing stuff has been very like, I don't know. It makes me sad when I think about like what's happening to Twitter, because that was like a big part of everyone's like everything. But yeah, I mean, whatever social media presence you have, even if it's like an email blast. I'm also, I was a scholarship kid. So just asking for money is not something that like is scary to me. Like as a writer, like it's about being vulnerable and putting yourself out there. And so like, if it's a story that you're going to package in order to like get the money, then like that's kind of what it has to be. I was also very influenced by folks like Terry Woods and just like urban novel and the culture of kind of like, these are not necessarily folks who are coming from like your big publishing houses. These are people who are selling books out of the trunk of their car. So as a self-publisher, it really is like, when I was living abroad, people were hitting me up about my life anyway. And I was like, okay, I got a blog. I got all these kind of like extended relationships. I was in a viral documentary. And so there was kind of like eyes on me. And I remember my birthday. I was like, it's Facebook. So this is back when, you know, Facebook was relevant and people actually, you get like all of these happy birthday, happy birthday. And that's when I would post. Like when I had the most attention, I'd be like, hey, I published the ebook. And like almost every year for those few years, an ebook was available. When people talked to me, I was just like, hey, I got this thing for sale. You want to know more about it? Here's a link, which I do still have that link and I will drop that. But it's really just kind of like, you know, coming with like a hustle mentality. It wasn't, I was publishing ebooks and then I kind of got into like the formal literature space. Like I got into Varna, I got into summer literary seminar in Europe. And that's when I kind of just get on the other side of like, oh, deals and this and that. And it's, I don't have a deal. You know, I don't know if and when that's coming, but I feel very confident in my ability to get people to give me money to tell a story. And I think that like more than anything is like the energy to have. And other folks on the panel can talk more about, you know, the other side of it.
Yeah. Could I just ask you a quick follow-up? So you mentioned Facebook and you said when that was still relevant. So could you speak to maybe some platforms that you've used more in recent years, both for publishing and for getting your work out there?
Okay. I have used Gumroad, which is really cute. Like they just have a really cute interface. I know Amazon has like a direct publishing pipeline right now. Like you just upload your digital stuff, they give you your ISBN, they like print everything out for you. It's the whole thing. Instagram has been really helpful. Like there are a lot of self-publishers on Instagram. There are hashtags that you can follow. Yeah, those are the two off the top of my head, but it's like so many. Like there are so many ways to like self-publish today, even if it was like your own website with a Shopify or like a cart or just a store on your personal website. There are so many ways. I mean, I think it's just a matter of like creating an audience and a following for yourself. I think that's the harder part. Like the logistical, technical side of selling your book is widely available, but who are you selling your book to? I think is kind of more important right now.
Yeah, thank you so much. Damon, I see that you are unmuted.
Yeah, can everybody hear me better now?
Yeah.
Change rooms and took off my headphones, so hopefully sound is coming through. So I'm going to push back a tiny bit on what you just said about Facebook's irrelevance, and I think Facebook culturally is irrelevant, right? Okay, I'm still on Facebook again because I'm 43, so that's where a lot of my people are right now. But Facebook is actually, if you're talking about digital content and you're talking about, getting clicks and getting ads on the page, Facebook, in terms of like the popular social media platforms, IG, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook drives traffic more than anything else. When you go viral on Facebook, it actually turns into clicks. Whereas if you go viral on Twitter becomes more of like a self-contained space where you might get some, traffic on the piece that you wrote, on the essay that you wrote from Twitter, and you'll get people talking about it on Twitter. But in terms of getting people actually clicking on the actual story, Facebook is by far still the best. But then they fuck around with the algorithms. And then sometimes,
no, you're right. No shade to Facebook. I'm just not on there, but that's on me. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and but again, I agree though about its cultural relevance, and but I'm still there. So, but also about the money thing, I've gone to banks inside the banks as a person with $6 in his account, right? And I've gone to banks to speak to tellers with a lot more money than that. And people, they treat you differently. Okay, when you have more money. And again, I've experienced that firsthand, where when you have more money, they invent ways to help you. They invent ways to find more money, or find ways for you to save money. Whereas when you don't have money, you get overdraft fees, you get all of these other things that are just trying to take all the money from you. And I'm saying that because that same sort of social proof exists in publishing and in digital media too, where if you're a person who, let's say you're a person who managed to, get published at the New York Times or the Washington Post or GQ or any other major publication, and you command a certain fee for your words, then other people are going to start giving you that sort of money. It is like the most, I don't know, equilibrium shifting sort of thing that happens, where your work may not even be that much better than it was before. But because of, again, the social proof, like, oh, well, these people gave him $2,000 to do this thing, so that must be what he commands, so that's how much I'm going to pay him. And that sort of thing happens. That sort of thing happens where, again, you would think that people aren't as influenced by what other people are doing and what they've heard other people are doing, but that happens all of the time. And so, yeah, it's a lot easier to make money doing this when you've already made money doing this. And again, that feels like double talk. But there's like a I don't know, like a scale that once you get on top of it, or once you're going up the scale, then things people start wanting to give you opportunities. I didn't have the same sort of traditional background. I don't have an MFA. I'm not from New York City or DC or Chicago. I'm from Pittsburgh. I still live in Pittsburgh right now, and I didn't go to like an Ivy. I didn't have like the same sort of trajectory that a lot of people who are in publishing have had, right? And so there are a lot of opportunities, money related opportunities that are available that I had no idea about: fellowships, grants, residencies, things of that nature. Like I just did my first ever residency last week. It was a Featherstone residency. It's at Martha's Vineyard, my first ever time at Martha's Vineyard too. And I was part of the second cohort of this residency. And what they want to do is, instead of casting a wide net, they want to have each of the people who have gone through the residency recommend like 5 people to be a part of the next cohort. And so one of the people I recommended is a friend who's also in publishing, and has also had a similar sort of background, similar sort of trajectory. And I told her about this residency. And the first question she asked was, okay, how much does it cost? And she hadn't realized, and again, I didn't realize, until about 3 or 4 years ago, that they pay you. You don't have to pay for these things. They actually pay you to attend these things. And so just that right there, in terms of and it's not even like it's not a lack of literacy. It's more of like a certain class of people having like a financial gatekeeping, right? And again, that is ubiquitous, that is pervasive, and that is industry wide. And I feel like the more that we are able to get together and talk about money and talk about certain paths to money, the less pervasive that sort of gatekeeping will be.
Yeah, thank you so much, Damon. And I actually wanted to check and see if Isle maybe wanted to speak a little bit about the traditional side of publishing, as we're kind of getting into that subject.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. I love both what all y'all have been saying. I mean, I think so. Last year when my book came out, I started to learn how to freelance. I'd never done it before. I'd gone the like MFA route, and most of what I knew about publishing was through publishing in like literary magazines, which paid absolutely nothing. So I like wasn't accustomed to like actually being able to like make any sort of money off of my writing. And I remember talking to a friend who had been freelancing for a while. And I just asked her, I was like, oh, like when I pitch a piece and an editor wants it and they say, we can pay you X amount, you say yes, right? And she's like, you never say yes. She's like, you always say, actually, my rates are this. Can you meet me there? And I was like, oh, I've been agreeing to everything that everyone has told me. And that I think was like a huge revelation for me. And I think goes back to what you were saying, Damon, like how like beginning to assume that I have more worth as a writer leads editors to be like, oh, they must be worth more if they're asking for more, even though the only thing that has changed is a friend being like, ask for more, which has been really like, and I try to like tell people that all the time. As for like the more traditional side of it, I don't know, like I was sort of hiding out in universities for a while. And that I think was good. But then when I got on the outside and I didn't really want to be in academia, I felt like I was suddenly figuring out how to make it work. I was actually really fortunate. I was able to write my first book while doing a PhD. So like that, and I was able to sell that book, and that allowed me to have some bit of a cushion. It did make it really hard to find some place to live, though, to try to like prove to people like, oh, like I swear I have money coming, even though I haven't had like a pay stub in like 2 years. Just like there's this like I'm sending like printed letters and like trying to explain like why this is proof that money will be coming down the line. So I think there was a lot of that, a lot of just what felt to me like lying to people and like landlords and stuff like that. But for the most part, I think I don't know, I think I've just been lucky to be able to carve out enough time to write books and to be able to do a lot of freelance work in between. I also, like, before my first book came out, I just like really focused on writing a second book. So by the time the first one was coming out, I had like a draft ready, and that has been just, I don't know, trying to like live with a bunch of roommates and like sort of live sort of cheaply, like you, Nia, I'm like on like Obamacare as well, like finding ways to like get health insurance where it is like funded where I can. So I think that just trying to like cut back on cost wherever I can has been sort of a major part of it, while also sort of lily padding between like other ways to make a little bit of money.
Thank you so much, Isle. I'm going to ask Taylor as well to answer this question, but before I do, I want to let our panelists know that we have wonderful questions in the Q&A, and if you're able to take a look and see if a question might be about something that you've said and you'd like to answer that by typing, feel free. Obviously, no pressure. But after we finish up with this question, we'll probably move into some of our other industries like teaching and gig work as well. So some of those publishing questions maybe will be answered through the Q&A. But before we do that, Taylor, would you mind speaking to this question about publishing?
Sure. So I did see a couple of people in the caption asking about like, how do you self-publish? And Nia kind of brought up that Amazon does have an option, and that's the option that I'm currently working with in self-publishing. It's called Amazon KDP, and you kind of do all of the work on your own. So there's still that creative freedom you have in creating it yourself, but you can do it on Canva, Google Sheets, and upload it, and they create the book for you, they print it for you. And I think that's a great option because, one, you're not paying for the book until someone bought it. And so you don't have boxes of books somewhere begging a bookstore to put them somewhere because you're not working with a publishing company and they don't want to work with you. I think it's really important to have that option. And for me, it was always like, well, I don't have the same connections that other people who are publishing right now have. How do I do this on my own? And I think it was very discouraging to know that I would be doing it on my own, and that in self-publishing, I'm also signing up to be my own digital marketer, my own networker, my own manager, my own agent, and doing all of that. But I think those are skills that are actually really important to have as a writer, especially even in my job now. I'm learning what copywriting is and how important a social media platform is to creating an audience. And also kind of to what Damon was talking about in like the grant and residency sphere. So in connection with my book that I'm publishing, I'm also releasing a line with my brand. So basically how I got around not getting paid for my writing was to start a fashion brand called Poetry for the Streets, in which I put my poetry on clothes. And it gave me the opportunity to apply for all those small business and entrepreneur grants that I was seeing and put money into writing my own book. And so it's been a great opportunity because now not only am I telling a story through the actual book that someone is buying, but I'm also like giving them something that they can wear and own my writing in a way, and parts of my poetry that connect to them. And I think it's also been really great because I've applied for so many grants and gotten accepted just because I'm not saying, hey, please pay for my writing. I'm saying, hey, please pay for my fashion design, when really they're paying for my writing. So there is a little bit of deception that goes on in the grant and residency and fellowship area, which I think is really important that we start breaking down those walls, because this is all art. And these people are saying, we want to pay for your art, but then deciding what art they're willing to pay for, or whose art they're willing to pay for. And for me, that's been something that's really important to learn, is like, I do have to deceive a little bit in those grant applications and those scholarships, but in a way that also reminds them that I am not just creating something that you guys can put on your Instagram and put a hashtag on and get some likes and follows from. Like, I'm creating something that has longevity, that can go beyond just publishing a book with a publishing house. And so I think it's something that I'm very much interested in the future. But knowing that I can do it myself now means that I'll never have to wait around and wonder if I can do it with someone else. And then also just knowing my worth in, I'm making my own prices. Like right now, I'm trying to decide how to price my book. And it's a lot easier to make it higher because for me, I'm like, well, I'm not paying for it until someone buys it. So if no one buys this book, at least I know that I didn't sell this book for less than it was worth. And I think a lot of people should consider that option, even if you're working on something and you feel like you want to get it out there, just put it somewhere. If you want to create a website, I'm creating my website on Squarespace, and they have a bunch of different options for creating ebooks and creating virtual content that you can share. And honestly, I hate calling it content because it's literally art. We're writers, we're creating things, but we live in a world now where if you can post it on somewhere, it's considered content. So just knowing that you're worth more than just a hashtag or likes on Instagram, and that you can sell your work, and that it might take time, and you might not get the audience you're looking for, or you might not get it as quickly as possible. But this is a waiting game, and knowing that you can wait it out because you love what you're doing. Obviously that's not realistic for everyone. I live at home with my mom. I should say that now before I go any further, because I commend the other writers on this panel who are supporting themselves completely by themselves and their families through their writing. But I know that I have I don't even know what word to call it, but I know that if they can do it, then I can do it. And my goal right now is to have my own place and to start my own life. And so I'm like, if you guys can do it, then that's giving me the hope and the courage that I will not end up on the street if I move out after I sell my book. So thank you guys for being here and for sharing that. And I hope that I can also share my side of it, being very early on in the process.
Thank you so much, Taylor. I think we're going to move on to our next topic right now, which is teaching, as well as other gig work. But Taylor, there's some great questions in the Q&A for you as well after that. Now, I wanted to ask Aisle, could you speak a little bit to teaching as a viable form of income, and where you teach and how you find those positions?
For sure. So I teach through something called the Shipman Agency. Before that, I was teaching through Catapult. They offer online classes, and I taught the same class for Catapult 4 times, which was called a opening novel chapter. And most of the students and we would work on the opening chapter for their novels. We would read the openings for novels each week. And that was a pretty generative class that would also lead into workshops. Since then, since I've started teaching at Shipman, I've been able to have a much longer sort of goal for the class rather than an 8-week class that is now a year-long class. And we're reading entire novels right now. And the students, I'm asking them to write between about 2,500 and 5,000 words a week, which I check in on. I don't read it thoroughly, but I do sort of give them a great, keep going. We'll have a Zoom call if you're feeling like, that you're not getting things finished. If you want to talk about it at the beginning of class, every other session or so, I'll leave opportunity for people to read writing that they're really excited about, things to just sort of keep the energy going on their books, because I think that's one of the hardest things, especially in a longer project, is just being like, why am I still doing this? Why do I want to keep doing this? So that, I think right now, a lot of the class at this time, as they're generating work, is about motivation. So I feel really fortunate that I was able to design this class and that I was able to have a place that would host it. I considered going and just kind of teaching it on my own, just paying for the professional Zoom link and then just doing it that way. My speaking agency takes 20% of everything, which is much less than was previously taken when I was teaching classes. So that has been pretty fortunate for me, because I have, there is the sort of administration work that I'm really bad at that they're able to do for me, and that they're able to sort of publicize it. A lot of my students in the class are students who I worked with at Catapult, who liked working with me, and I've continued working with them. I also do a lot of freelance editing as well. Someone once told me, I asked about her rates, and she essentially said, make sure that it's worth the amount of time that you'll be putting into it. And I've been following that, and I think I meet a lot of people who are willing to pay for the rates that I ask for. I think it depends. Former students, I charge a lot less, just because it's the continuation of a relationship that I already have. So those types of things are sort of how I put together my teaching life. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's super helpful. Nia, did you have any thoughts on teaching as well?
Yeah, I'm actually teaching a course at the Abrams Art Center right now, a workshop that I put together through offering free workshops, I think in 2021, So after I was laid off, I just started like hosting free writing workshops because I was in a lot of virtual writing workshop spaces, and it was just really enjoyable. And I was able to, it would literally be free. I would ask for donations, and like depending on how the class went, I could make a lot of money or a little bit of money, but I knew that I had something that was like working, and I would have like a survey, and the folks would give me like, you know, you could do this differently, or we should do this. So I was really able to kind of crowdsource a curriculum for myself. I applied to a local grant here. And so I was actually able to pay myself to teach for free to a group of creative aging women in the spring. And then that was the curriculum that I've been kind of like taking to different like cultural centers or art spaces or like institutions that are looking for those types of things. I'm not a grad student, like I've only gotten my BA. So I technically could try to go into academia, but I don't know, like teaching is fun to me when it's like chill, like it's very generative. I'm still very much a student myself. So I've been finding myself really enjoying like a more relaxed generative writing space where we're coming together. And I'm really just creating a space for people to write. Like what I find is that people need somebody to hold them accountable to writing more than like teaching them things. Because people who want to write already know a lot of stuff. They read all the books, like they just haven't done the actual like act of writing. And so my workshops are kind of centered on like, this is what we're reading and this is what we're writing and this is the thing. I have a background in like teaching art to like elementary school kids. So it's very like coming from a different place, but it's been pretty effective. I think my students have, I'm really enjoying like what people write. I'm also very passionate about like people not working in like their chosen discipline. So a lot of my students are not necessarily even writers per se. These are people who just read a lot. Maybe they do something altogether different. But that's been really enjoyable. What else about teaching? But yeah, there's a lot of money in kind of creating a curriculum, especially right now, because there's so much of a demand and a need for virtual like activities. So that's something that like, if you're good with people as a writer, I think you could probably find like a lot of money there.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really interesting from both of you hearing about opportunities for teaching that are not just like teaching first year writing at a university. I feel like that's important to think about and broaden that. The other types of work that people I think are very interested in are freelance editing and writing, copywriting, copy editing. So I'd like to give us an opportunity to chat about that a little bit. There's actually a question in the Q&A about where you even start with finding freelance writing and editing jobs. And I actually think that's a really good question. Just like, how do you get access to that kind of world? So I'm wondering if anybody has thoughts on that.
I would say that I get a lot of my freelance work just from networking in spaces that don't necessarily seem like they'll be paying you first. And I think that sounds insane, but it's really important to put yourself out there and to network with people before there's a price on the line, because one, you get to show them who you are, show them the work that you're creating, and two, it just always seems impossible to make money from certain things until you're doing it. And I think, like, for example, being paid to perform poetry, and those are opportunities that I've gotten through my job at Blue Stoop. There weren't necessarily things that I was like, oh, like, I'm going to go for this. They kind of came to me. And so there is kind of that putting yourself out there, like, this is what I do and I get paid for it. And kind of knowing that you have a worth, and then hearing back from people, making those connections, and also just putting yourself in those areas of people similar to you in the same kind of area in the world. So like, for example, for me as a poet, I make sure I go to every open mic I can find. And even if I'm not performing, I'm talking to poets, I'm hearing what kind of work they're doing. What one possible help, if anyone is in Philadelphia, I'm a member at Rec Philly, and it's just kind of a space in Center City that is amazing for creatives from all areas. And there is an app where basically, if you're a member, you can put yourself out there that you do these things, and people reach out to you when you need them. And I think it's important to think of, when you're a writer and you're working on something, there's parts of it that you don't know how to do. Like if you're trying to publish a book and you're terrible at graphic design, you're going to need to hit somebody else to help you with your cover. In that same scenario, there's someone who's creating the graphics and needs the writing, or there's someone who's creating, I don't know, a film, and they have the idea, but they can't put the words to it. And I think that's basically what copywriting is. And it seems not as creative when you think about it that way, because people think of copywriting as the stuff on bottles of shampoo or the stuff at the bottom of commercials. But the commercials themselves, the jingles you hear on the radio, all that stuff is being written by someone. And so there are the opportunities out there. And I think learning about copywriting and digital marketing are just really important skills to have for yourself. And then also, once you can kind of start creating a portfolio of things you've done for yourself, then you can find jobs through it. I don't think it's as easy as just going on Fiverr or these other platforms and saying, I think I can do this. Let me see if I can get paid for it. You have to have a portfolio. Even if you're just giving yourself a challenge to do something every couple of days and write something short, like, I don't know, writing a commercial, or just something small that you can say that you've done it before, even if you haven't gotten paid for it before, because your work can be worth the pay, but you have to have the work first.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Taylor. And I would just quickly add to, when you mentioned Fiverr, I would say that personally, I found most of my freelance gigs actually through social media, like Facebook, Damon, and people I found were giving out better rates sometimes in those spaces as well. So joining those kinds of groups and spaces has been important for me. Nia, I saw you unmute.
Yeah, I was gonna say something. I don't want to put you on Front Street, Damon, but I definitely used to be on your blog. Definitely learned a lot about the world, my own voice on that blog. But I was going to say, I don't know, I feel a little detached, but because so much is the internet is going through a state of return. But once upon a time, like, blogging was where you develop your portfolio. And then you could say, like, I wrote on this blog, and I've been a blogger for a long, long, long time. And a lot of my first bylines were not paid great. I was definitely one of the people like, oh, you're gonna publish me? Sure, I'll take $50, you know, and you work your way up, or not, because I'm in a place where I'm telling people my rate and they are not responding. So that is also like, you know, the media world is a market, and we got our moments. But, you know, just kind of doubling down on what you were saying, Taylor, like just getting your name out there. However, it looks like, even if you have to self-publish your blog, because blogging is the basic self-publishing, and WordPress is still free. So that's a great place to start.
Amazing. Thank you. I also wanted to talk a little bit about actually writing for magazines. One of the things that has come up is that those outlets are shrinking, or they don't have as much of a budget anymore. And so I'm curious if we can talk about how you might find work for magazines, and how do you make sure you still have that work as those budgets are shifting and changing. And I'll maybe like to speak to that, maybe Damon after that, possibly.
Yeah, I can say a little bit of how I started. I feel like I was like absolutely unhinged when I was looking for like how to pitch. I would go on Twitter and search a magazine name and then editor, and then I would do a people search, and then I would just sort of guess their email and just sort of pitch, and then I would get like pinged back like, this email doesn't exist, and then I would try like first name underscore last name like at gq.com or something, and then I would try like first name period last name, until it like I didn't get the sort of like domain doesn't exist email, and I'd be like, okay, it landed, right? And that, I think, would be the first sign for me that like my pitch actually went through. Oftentimes there were times when I would like pitch something, like do like 8 or 9 pitches before I even got a rejection, and then it would be 3 or 4 more until I actually like, someone was like, we like this, right? So I think that for me was just a lot of like, I would like have an hour in the day where I'd be like, I'm just gonna send a lot of emails and like change all of these like pitches to like make sure it's going to the right editor and like everything is personalized. So I think early on, that I think was like my jump into writing for magazines. As for maintaining those connections, I think what's been really interesting for me is like early on, I was interested in just trying to like write for a lot of places and sort of getting my name out there. And now that I've been able to do that, I've been really lucky, but I also feel like I have gotten to a point where there are editors who I really trust. And so when there's a piece that I've been thinking about and I like have an editor in mind, that's been really good too. And someone who I can write to and just be like, I think you would be the right person for this. And there's enough of a relationship there where they might come to me as well. So I think building that relationship has taken some time, but it's been really wonderful. And I think like a lot of it is just like, you know, you work together and you eventually like trust someone, and that I think it started in such a like frantic way is unexpected for me. But I think just hopefully you just sort of understand who really understands your work, who edits you in a way that sort of gets your voice onto the page and your thoughts onto the page in a way that seems accurate for what you're trying to say. Figuring that out has been really wonderful, but it's taken some work as well.
Thanks, Isle. Damon, did you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I just realized that my background is shoes and Christmas ornaments. I just realized it's a lot, just chaos. Before I even start, I just want to say, Taylor, I've also sold t-shirts. I've sold so many t-shirts to supplement my writing before, back when freelancing was more tenuous, tenuous, and I needed the money, right? And so it was a branding opportunity, but also money, right, from selling the t-shirt. So I've definitely done that. And my first time I got paid for a thing was for a Clutch magazine in 2009, and they paid me $30 to write a piece. So again, I didn't really get a chance to respond to either of you two when you were talking, but yeah, I've been there. But with the magazines, and it actually goes back to even what both Nia and Taylor were saying about portfolio building, where I'm going to just pivot a little bit. It is not so much, it's portfolio building, but it's also, I hate this word, but I'm going to use this word because I can't think of another word, brand building. I hate that fucking word, but having a thing, right? Like, so you are known for your takes on race and culture, or you're known for your particular viewpoints about politics, or you're known for your your wit and your pithiness when you write about fashion, or whatever it is that you're known for, right? And I think if you want to be attractive to both digital media and also traditional print media, then having a thing, right? Having a thing having a distinguishing thing that when they hire you, they know what they're getting. And you might not be everyone's cup of tea. You might not fit for you you might not fit for Slate, but you might fit for the Atlantic, or you might not fit for the Atlantic, or you might fit for Slate. And also, speaking of Atlantic and Slate, those are just two I just thought off the top of my head. It's also very crucial to know the sensibilities of each publication, because when you're approaching these places about writing, about editing, about working there, every place has like a different vibe, has a different sensibility, has a different, you could even look at the titles of the pieces. Some places are a bit more sober, some places are a bit more clickbaity, and all of that matters. All of that matters when you're approaching, when you're approaching people and you're trying to pitch. That was a mistake that I made, very early in my career, where I would just blindly pitch magazines and other, digital publications with the same pitch. Right? I would just cut and paste and write the same thing to multiple different places, not realizing that tailoring a pitch, if you are going to pitch, is the most effective way of doing that, because that shows people that, okay, this person isn't just blindly pitching. This person knows, what the sensibility, what the vibe, what the, what the expectation of rigor is for this publication, and has tailored their pitch, in concert of that expectation. And so again, having a familiarity of all of the different spaces, not just the spaces that you are familiar with. And also too, you should be a reader, because if you pitch, I keep bringing up Slate, but if you pitch Slate or you pitch The Atlantic and you pitch a thing that was published already by another writer 2 weeks ago, then again, that's a sign that, maybe you're not as up, maybe you're not as aware as you need to be in order to exist in those spaces. But again, I think that the best way to get publish, to get editing, to get writing jobs, is to have them approach you. And you do that by creating, again, here's that word again, creating a brand, creating a distinguishing, creating a distinguishing thing where people know your work, they know your writing, and they know what they're getting when they get you.
I want to add really quickly to Damon. I love that you said like knowing like, what they've published before. I think like what's also really important is just knowing like having a launch into a conversation that might already be happening is super important too. So if like there is a slate piece and like people are talking about it, then I can pitch the Atlantic based on like what that conversation is and how to sort of respond to that. I think like that has been really effective for me as well. Just like showing how like there might be like a hole or a gap like at the Atlantic where they haven't covered this thing yet, and that can sort of create an opportunity for you if you want to begin that conversation there that maybe other people are having in other magazines too.
Oh, that's a great point. That's a perfect point. And again, tailoring a pitch. It's like, okay, you do not have this, and I can offer this, and you might need this, and so hire me. Yeah, that was a great point.
I just also wanted to add that I think it can be a little bit intimidating going into that world. And it's really important when getting started, at least for me, it has been kind of what you guys are talking about in tailoring, but instead of just tailoring to a specific magazine or publication, also tailoring to your community and making sure that you're being present where you are. And so like, for example, being from Philly and making sure that I'm constantly being present and known in the poet scene and in the writing scene in general has been really helpful, because I've been given opportunities that I didn't think would be out there. Like I just recently became a sponsored poet through Philly Typewriter, and I got a free typewriter. And now whenever I post, I'm getting their shares. So now I'm not only getting my audience, but I'm getting their audience. And I think it's important to understand that obviously the goal is that financial stability and making sure that you're getting paid from your writing, but it's also just getting people to know who you are and know that they're not just thinking, oh, Taylor, she's a writer, but Taylor's a writer that's known for that thing, or she's done this. And I think you guys, a lot of you have those things to say that you've done, but from my perspective, in being so new to the writing world, it's exciting to like have those opportunities to make a name for myself and going along the way of being open to opportunities and connections that I didn't think would initially be there.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. We are starting to get close to the end of our time. We're at 8 o'clock. And so I want to give us all an opportunity to answer one final question before I let you all go. I know that there's so many things that we didn't get to touch on today, but I really appreciate your time and your energy in speaking to these questions about financial stability, which is such an important topic for us all. My closing question for each of you is, what is one thing that you feel like writers can do today to bring them closer to financial stability? And I'm going to go ahead and start with Nia.
It's so funny that you started with me, because I was literally like, how do I drop my link to my Gumroad in the chat? I'm serious. How do I just say it, or do I just like, because I don't know how to interact with the folks that are watching.
So I think Johnny is able maybe to send things out as well. So maybe we can send something to Johnny and then that can be sent out.
All right, Johnny, I'm sending it to you. From the looks of it, it's niahampton.gumroad.com if anyone is interested. But yeah, I mean, that is kind of my answer. Like I cannot afford to not be doing this right now. Like I didn't want to leave you hanging out there, Taylor, but I'm also living at home. This is my mother's house. I was not always here, but I'm here again recently. And I'm like, oh, if I stay here this time, I'll be able to actually like write full time without doing the like full-time job and the full-time writing and the stress and all of that stuff. And, you know, living at home is what it is, but like, it's a real thing. Because unfortunately, we live in a society that does not make, you know, living off of your art easy, as we know. And so you do have to make very real decisions about like how you're going to devote yourself to this particular path. And so because I have chosen to continue to write, even when I have my full-time jobs, I'm writing on other people's time and doing it anyway. So I might as well just jump into it wholeheartedly. So I don't know if that answers it, but like that's the general answer of like, I'm writing regardless, I might as well get paid for it. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I also think you really answered the question in thinking about how we constantly have to be telling people about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and not
no matter how awkward and cringe it is.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, but the nature of writing is cringy. Like, it's so embarrassing to write in the first place. Like, are you kidding? It's so funny because I'll do it and then I'm like, oh my God, you're gonna read it. Like, don't look at me, but like, look at me. So
absolutely. Damon, did you have any thoughts on what people can do today to help with their financial stability?
I mean, marry rich. That's what you could definitely do.
Can you do that in one day though? 24 hours?
No, you got game. Move to Pittsburgh helps. Now, in the last part, I'm serious about the last part. Move to Pittsburgh, where I was fortunate, where I live in a city that, for all of Pittsburgh's faults, has a pretty manageable cost of living still. Where if I lived in Philadelphia, or I've lived in New York City or DC or Chicago or San Francisco, wherever those other bigger cities, then, when I first started freelancing, I was able to, have my little apartment and, whatever, I probably would have had to have roommates or had to get a real job, and so living in a city that had a lower cost of living definitely helped me. And, and again, I'm not going to leave Taylor and Nia out there either. I was living at home. I was living at home until I was 26. Then I got my own place. And then, I was working in academia. I got laid off. And that's when I started made the decision to write full time. I was in my 30s. And, I got some pretty good opportunities and was doing well. And then one of those opportunities dried up like really quickly, like someone actually stole money and got arrested for a reason. And I had to move back home, and I was at that time like 32 or 33. And I had to move back home for like 3 months until this other opportunity, shored up. And so that is a very, very substantially real thing. Right. And again, I think that more of us need to be transparent about what it takes and about the decisions that need to be made, in terms of, how to make a living while writing, and yeah, at this moment right now, today, I can support a family with my work, but it hasn't always been that way, and again, I think it's a great disservice to everyone to pretend otherwise, to not be real about, I was living at home, or I had negative $16 in my balance and had this overdraft fees, and I'm only doing this panel because I got paid for it. Those are real decisions that writers have to make every day. And I think that, if a conversation like this does anything, I think it should remove the shame out of the money conversation, when it comes to writing, when it comes to our work, because I think we attach so much, in terms of like validation, in terms of like acceptance, with the amount of money that we happen to make with writing. And I know I do it, I've done it, and I still have that in me, and I'm trying to extract it. But again, I think we need to just find a way to subvert that. And I think the best way to do it is to be as transparent as possible about it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Damon. So your task, all of you here, is to start being more transparent about money as you move forward with your writing career. Taylor, what would you say would be your tip for everyone?
So I think I have to make sure that I'm saying that my tip is for those who are really just getting into it and maybe don't have the option to make it a full-time thing right now. Make it a full-time thing, whether you're working a full-time job or not. I think knowing that even if you're working a full-time job, you have monopoly over the hours that you're not there. Even if it's working on your break, it's waking up an hour earlier before work to get some writing done. I think it's really important to put yourself in the place that you want to be, even if you're not there yet. And that's what I had to do. I was working as a supervisor at ShopRite, and I was writing on my break. I was bringing my laptop with me and just writing whatever I could, making sure that when I got off of work, even if I had to drink extra coffee when I probably shouldn't have, I was writing something. And I think it's also really important when you are not necessarily getting consistent money to really have, if you have to make a spreadsheet, look at what you're making and think about what you can be doing to even out the gap between what you're making, what you want to be making. What I do right now, because I do have somewhat of a consistent income for my job at Blue Stoop, is I write down how much I'm making at Blue Stoop and I write how much I want to be making a month. And I'm making sure that I'm applying to everything possible and sending out my stuff to fill out in that gap. And so I don't always get there every month. Some months I go way over. And so I think it's just really important to make sure that you are putting yourself out there for those opportunities, apply to everything. And I think it's really important, especially if you don't have publishing experience or you don't have a manager or an agent or a book deal, that somewhat gives you more of an opportunity because now you don't have someone saying, I'm the only person that can put out your work. You can put your work wherever you can, as much as you can, as long as there's not someone saying, once you publish with us, you can't publish anywhere else. I have a couple of pieces. One piece that I wrote in high school that is in 3 different places right now, and I got paid for it to be in 3 different places. And so it's really important to just make sure that you're marketing yourself, you're putting yourself out there. I see someone asking where they can find me. My Instagram is Poetry for the Streets. That's the only one that I'm sharing right now because I'm still working on my personal Instagram and putting out my book. But yeah, really just market yourself. If you have to do it on social media and you absolutely hate social media, make it a job. It's one of the best ways that we have right now, and it seems like one of the worst, but it's an opportunity to put yourself out there and to talk to people that you would never have the opportunity to. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Taylor. So much wisdom in that answer. And Isle, what would be your thing for people to do today?
I feel like I should also say I also lived at home when my book was on submission. So all of us were, and I was home for like about 6 months and while sort of finishing off my PhD remotely at the same time, sort of like pandemic crossover. But I do think like, and that, just shortly, like that was, I think, one of the things that gave me enough foundation to be able to like leave eventually, like once those things were finished. For me, I love what Taylor said sort of to start off about like making sure that you're getting about 2 to 3 pages down a day, because I've really gone the like book route. For me, like when I was writing my second book, I was like, I need to do 5 pages every day. And I did that. And after 6 months, I had a book. And I think if that for me is like having something that I can eventually like sell is, I think, the best thing that you can do, right? Making sure that you're getting pages down, that if you're working on a book that you are like putting in that time, no matter what it takes. Like 2 pages like is hard, but I think it's something that you can like pull off, especially once you start to get into the rhythm of it. And it's something that you get accustomed to. And eventually after, 6, 7, 8 months, like you might have a full book. If you're working on shorter pieces, like even after like a couple weeks, you'll have something that you can sell and get out there. And so just finding some consistency, I think, is the most important thing, just so that you always have something out there that you can sort of bring to people and share, whether it be editors or just through social media, or like through self-publishing.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you for all of your wonderful answers, all of you throughout tonight. Really appreciate you being here with me. And let me go ahead and turn it back over to Johnny.
Wow, thank you all so much. This is such great advice. I just wanted to say, the Authors Guild always recommends keeping your copyright, and that helps you get paid multiple times for something. But in a different vein, I wanted to point out that if you do something like Fiverr, Upwork, or other platforms, you probably aren't keeping your copyright, but you might not be able to use it in a portfolio either. There's never shame in working for money, but you want to make sure that you have some work with a byline, that you're keeping copyright for some of your work. Those are great things to keep in mind. So I'm glad we touched on that. But in any case, I'll let you all go. We'll send up a follow-up email with links where you can find our panelists and their work. So you can catch up with them and follow along. Thanks all so much. And if you have questions for us, you can contact me at support@authorsguild.org. All right, thank you and have a good night.
All right, thanks, everybody.